Can you feel it? It's warm. Doesn't hurt at all. See?
If I told you right now that Changli's story in Wuthering Waves is good, I would be wrong, because good would be an understatement. In so many ways, I assume that this showcase left everyone in awe for many reasons. What they did was completely unexpected, even for me who really wanted a good story out of this character. Whatever I had in mind about her was completely thrown off the table because Kura Games decided to deliver something even better. In this video, I want to talk about how great of a story this is, how amazing Kura's direction is regarding their story quests so far, but especially those of Changli and Yinlin, who were or are seen by the community as fan service characters. But of course, focus also on what made Changli's story so compelling in the first place. Because, in my humble opinion, this is the best story they've written so far for Wuthering Waves. Yes, the main story included. This was so nicely put together, both in terms of a video game story and a concept in storytelling in general, no matter the medium. And as someone who loves stories first and games second, I find it hard to not yap about it. So if you like your lore, stories, and hot women who are more than just waifus and fan service, buckle up because this is going to be a long conversation. This video is my love letter to Changli's character. Let's begin. Of course, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you already played the quest, so this recap section will be very quick and will only focus on Changli's arc. Basically, the story just revolves around the tales of immortality in Hongshan, specifically in Mount Firmament. I was wrong in my video, Changli herself is not immortal, but she does have a weak link to living, or staying alive because she grew up burning and she knew that she would die at a young age. Her forte is fire or fusion, and while that by itself is destructive enough, she was also born very powerful. Every time she used her forte, she would burn as well. Zhang Li, ever since she was a child until the moment of the end of this quest, suffered from anticipatory grief, and it is a topic they covered beautifully even with the side characters involved, which I will expand on later. Her mantra has always been to use her power for peace, even at the cost of her own life. Even as a child, Changli used that power to protect others from the tacit discords. She grew up nameless after everyone she knew perished because of an attack. She was the only survivor, and it was only after she met her master did she get her name, Changli, which, according to him, means eternal blaze. Her master was the one who taught her how to control her power in many ways, and the battle in the Sonoran Sphere at the end of this quest was, as she said, the final test to see whether she succeeded, because that action required a lot of control that can only come from someone who can wield such blazing fire like she does. And she did succeed. In the end, she finally gained full control of her power. Or at least she realized that she now has full control over her power.
This place!
I originally made these screen records with commentary so I could post my reaction to Changli's story quest, and if I unmute this right now, you'll hear things so unholy you'll probably cringe, but like in a funny way because it's fun to make jokes when they're not real. But anyway, the point is that now I changed my mind because it felt disrespectful to post a mindless video when I could do an analysis instead. After playing her quest, my perception of Cheng Li changed for the better. And I'm not saying I did not respect her character before. It's just that now she's more than just the hot lady who happens to be smart and powerful and can beat me up. I mean, she's still all of those things, but after writing this story quest, Kura proved once more that what they do is in fact for fan service, that doesn't take away the fact that they can give these characters interesting and complex stories to match. While I will still say that she's freaking gorgeous every time I look at her, that won't be the first thing on my mind. I will now see her in a different light. What she is a waifu, that's for sure, but she's also more. It is always rewarding to be more. And the thing about Kuro is that they don't discriminate when it comes to these stories. And I mean, in a sense that sometimes, but not always, sometimes because games have more female characters for the quote unquote fan service, the good writing sometimes only reaches the male characters. But that's not the case here. So far, we've got Jian, Lingyang, Yinden, Changli, and even Jinxi's backstories. I would argue that all of them are good written, at least specifically in their respective companion quests. All of these backstories actually features topics like grief and life as their theme. If you squint, you can see it, and they were executed beautifully.
I know you have already looked past death, but remember, there are people who care about you. They want you to live on and be happy. Yes.
Most of these stories so far are just on the morally good or lawful good side of the spectrum, which makes me so excited about what Kuro will do when they write characters like Camellia or Scar. I guess what I'm saying is that I see the potential here, and I'm truly going to play this game for a lot of things, but mainly for story purposes. Now, back to Changli, I keep repeating that she's more than just fan service, but that's because after 1.1, I saw some comments about how sure the story was good, but the best part was still Changli's boobs. And frankly, I can't fault you. To be fair, I can't fault you because those shots were in fact very deliberate. But I guess my point is that gacha games are tricky because we're all playing it for different reasons. I even made a tweet about it. This is the part where I tell you that I personally don't think fan service, at least not too much of it, ruins a character, and Changli is proof of that. Sure, some people will still bark and, I don't know, only remember boob shots when they play through this quest, but that's them, okay? That's what they enjoy. Liking lore more and trying to see past the fan service or even seeing them in a balanced scale doesn't make us morally superior. Just makes us different from each other. Of course, the booba talk or the chick touch will still be the talk of the town because she is in fact very hot, but that doesn't take away the fact that she's well written and that her story is amazing. It is clear to me that Kuro wants to get this point across as well. Even her trailer is purely plot based. These are things she does. These are her actions. This is how she thinks. This is how people view her. This is how she views herself. These are her traits. And it's up to us how we will view her. And this is a character who is powerful in many ways than one. This is more than just waifu.
And you can drive them into a corner.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I made a Changli theories video, but I was wrong about all of it. Well, I got the theme correctly because that's quite easy. If you want to watch that video, go ahead, but if you don't, well, I just talked about how I theorized that Changli is either a villain, she will die, or she is immortal and that we will fight. I was so wrong, and I think I have just been conditioned into thinking that if I see a hot female video game character who is presented as smart and calm and calculating and powerful, She must be morally corrupt, or she must have bad intentions within her, or at least do something so grand or revealing. For me as both a writer and a consuming for me as both a writer and a s- for me as both a writer and a consumer of a story that's for me as a writer and as a for me as a writer and a consumer of stories, that's the easy route to take. That's the easy route to make a character interesting. But Korra didn't do any of that. I would even say that I'm glad they did not go the villain route because I mean that was very obvious. Killing her was also very obvious. They tackled death in a way that is emotional and interesting and something that can resonate to a lot of people. But also going back to the villain theory, if you think about it, Changli's backstory could have easily been a villain origin one. A sole survivor child who grew up in seclusion out of fear of hurting anyone but ends up hurting herself in the process. It's just a very easy route to take if they made her a villain. I like the fact that they chose a more intimate route for her story, a personal one, and one that potentially touches a lot of people, one that a lot of people can relate to if put in real life context. Chang Li's character development from since she was a child until now was properly executed and also done so beautifully. Those shots with her adult and child version give me so much chills. There are also multiple callbacks throughout the stories that made the payoff feel more special. Needless to say, there are subtle frames that show her character really well. I am not a film enthusiast, so I will not talk about extremely specific shots and angles, but I'm talking about her body language and even the tone of her voice. The most obvious one is, for example, in the trailer, Changli was shown playing Wei Chi with Jinxie. If you contrast their postures, you can easily tell that while they are both at ease, one of them is in control, or one of them has more control. Changli is comfortable and calm while Jinxie is thinking and alert. One can say that this ease versus unease is a representation of their teacher and student dynamic. However, at the end of Changli's quest, she played Weichi with Rover, and this was shown almost through the exact same frame. But this time, both of them are channeling the same posture. Rover does that because, of course, it's just her character, while Changli sits like that because she's playing against someone she deeply respected, almost revered, someone her master talked about since she was a child, and as she said in the story, someone closest to immortality, a concept she's always struggled with. They even switch sides, with Changli on the side of the less experienced student and Rover on the side of the master.
Also, if you really are the legendary person who changed the course of history, then you are perhaps the closest to immortality.
There is also another, which is the tone of her voice. I played in English and I want to applaud her voice actress because that's a flawless performance for her character. If you think her voice sucks, you're wrong. This is a very clear representation of her character. We know that the public views her differently. There were Easter eggs ever since the beginning of the main story in 1.0 that are even made clear in the beginning of her story quest. Chang Li is someone who does not care about the public opinion because her goals are set and she knows she's doing the right thing. Hence, she does not allow parts of herself to be exposed to people
The
easily.
explorer wanted to save his friend, indeed, but he was also hiding something. Maybe she's come to terms with her destiny, or maybe she never planned on continuing to live like that forever.
The feather she gave us is even in game. I hope we do use this sometimes in the future when we get another story or event with her, because this can be the end, right? If you haven't yet, I suggest reading the things in her character menu. She is such a good character and she feels so real.
My body temperature is higher than usual because of my flame controlling forte. It doesn't hinder daily tasks, but it does have its quirky consequences. Jinxi's iced pastries and Sanhua's delicate snowbirds always melt faster than I'd prefer in my hands.
Another thing I want to mention is her relationship with Jinxie. While we didn't see any of that in this story specifically, there were callbacks. Such in her voice lines, she says that the main reason she even went to Jinzhou to help was because her master is connected to Mount Firmament. But I also like to think that she did it for Jinxie. Like herself, Jinxie is a sole survivor who was born with great power. And knowing that she was once saved after she had a master, she knows she can lead someone to the correct path if she becomes someone else's master also. In my theory video, I mentioned that perhaps Changli is lawful neutral, but after this quest, I'm convinced she's lawful good. I think her personality bleeds through every decision they made, and it's not corny. The presentation of morality and goodness in her is not cheesy at all. I said earlier that writing a villain is safe because it's easy to make them compelling. But to make a heroic, lawful good character as compelling as Changli is just a job well done for the team behind the story. Of course, it's not exceptional or something. Maybe you're like, oh, you're glazing the story too much. But for a video game story, this is so good, man. Changli is not just good, she is precise and cunning. She has manipulative tendencies, like when she just waited for Rover's decision to look for Jinxie instead of asking for her help about Mount Firmament. But again, that lines up to her personality. Yes, she is being calculated, but she's also giving Rover the liberty to make decisions for herself, even inevitable ones.
Cautious, we did not intend to inconvenience you. I regret our lack of hospitality.
Lastly, aside from the conclusion, I want to talk about the symbolisms present in this story. I only played it once so far. I played it again on my alt in JP, but for now, only once, so I might have missed some things and I will not include very obvious ones. And also, maybe it isn't very serious and no one cares about symbolism in a gacha story, but here we go.
The cold.
The first one I want to talk about is this one. Fire is something that Changli has always known. She was born into that power, that uncontrollable flame that she uses to protect herself and others, especially others, even at the cost of her own safety. This symbolizes inner turmoil. It is both her pain and her remedy. Her pain in a way that she knows she has this power, but she was unable to save everyone, and her remedy in a way that this is still the main thing that will help her to achieve her goals. Wei Chi, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It's quiet and calculated, and it requires a peace of mind. Chang Li finds balance by living with both, the duality of man, if you may. In this story, she also mentioned that she now knows she cannot save everyone by herself or something of the same sentiment. So instead of being always on field and risking her life all the time, she uses her tactics and skills from the shadows to do even greater good. This is the balance of fire and Wei Chi within her. The next one is also fire. Yes, fire again, but this time by itself. We know that Chang Li was born with this, and because of this, she easily accepted that she will die eventually, and she does not have to fight it, as mentioned earlier in this video. And because of this, she easily accepted that she will die eventually, and she doesn't have to fight it. As mentioned earlier in the video, it's something we call anticipatory grief. It is something people who are or who live with chronically ill people are very familiar of.
For someone with a terminal illness, they should hold on to any chance of maybe she's come to terms with her destiny. Or maybe she never planned on continuing to live like that forever.
Even after meeting her master and learning how to control it, she still doesn't care, or at least she says so. Because in the end, she says,
I see. Perhaps this is why it's so hard to leave this beautiful world behind.
it was only after the final test did she realize that she can still make it count more. She did accept death ever since she was young, but deeply, there are parts of her that wants to hold on. Fire can symbolize so many things in this context if put in real life. It could be any chronic illness, that's the most straightforward one. It could be mental health. I saw people on Twitter calling her suicidal, and also a callback to Jinzhou calling her out, or other things like addiction and such. Anything that relates to giving up one's life because of the inevitable death. And I guess Changli surely knows how to value people around her. And she's only that strict towards herself, representing her inner turmoil. Because she's been burning her whole life, she did not see the point of trying to figure out how to live without that pain. Pain is normal. Pain is a part of her until it wasn't.
Can you feel it? It's warm. Doesn't hurt at all. See?
The third one is her blindfold. I know what you're thinking. No, it's not submission. It's actually the opposite. It's control. Okay, there could be an actual reason for this somewhere that we haven't revealed yet, but from how I personally take it, based on what was presented in the story, this represents control. When we met her as a child, her eyes glowed when she used her forte, and simultaneously, she hurt herself when doing so. Her eyes glowing is not a sight we saw with adult Changli. Instead, she merely has the blindfold on, which then burns as she summons even stronger fire. This blindfold symbolizes her control of her power, while its burning symbolizes her freedom after obtaining it. She burns the thing she uses to muster control because she doesn't need it. She is in control. Next, I want to talk about the past and future feature in this story. And this one is quite of a reach, and this is probably a headcanon that does not deserve to be here. But in the story, Rover met young Changli, and later on, there was an option to tell Changli or ask her something like, "But I wasn't really there when you were a child." I did not choose that option, so in my head, my thing is that past and future truly merge in the sonorosphere. Kinda like House Moving Castle style, where character 1 saved character 2 in the past and they can't remember, of course, because that's their future. Also, sorry for spoiling House for you. That's your fault for not watching it all these decades ago. I just think it's interesting, so please talk to me about it. And last thing I want to talk about is her tacit mark. The tacit mark that's placed under her breast. Just kidding. There's absolutely no reason for this, but I'd be lying if I told you I'm complaining.
Died forever. And if my master, did he do this?
Overall, the story was nicely put together from the theme, the consistency, the characters, and the dynamics among them, the pacing, even the gameplay that goes with it, which is pretty minimal and straightforward, which, in my opinion, made this so much more immersive. There was not a single moment in that story that I felt the need to do something else. Like it kept me glued to my screen in anticipation of what they had to offer. Changli, I would say, is now my favorite character in the game lore wise. It used to be Jinzhou, but hey, if Kuro will keep bringing out such interesting stories, maybe Changli will be dethroned also. Not as my main though. She's gonna stay as my main for a long time. Probably for as long as I play this game. You've reached the conclusion part of this video. From here onwards, it will be more subjective, so you can click off if you want. So, overall, it's an amazing story, and I really wanted to talk about it because, as mentioned, I wanted this to be a love letter to this character. If you ask me personally, I don't like to reduce her into the fan service character, but then again, as previously mentioned, that's outside my control. Still, I wanted to make a video to show how good written she is and how good of a character she is by herself. Another point I want to make is that fan service is not the end of a character. It does not ruin her per se. Maybe it does tint how other people view her, but in general, it doesn't ruin her entirely. And truly, I understand why fan service is huge in the gacha game space. I mean, I saw you people's thumbnails for Changli and Yinlin. They need to cater for a huge range of people, you know. I'm just glad Chris balancing it out in Wuthering Waves. If not, they're actually leaning towards more on character development. Maybe you have a different opinion. Maybe you think the fan service is getting too much. If you think that, let me know. But for me, they're actually balancing that out, and even they're even leaning more to um, the more character development side. I saw a lot of people call Changli waifu bait or worse, sexual bait on Twitter, and while I can't really deny that she is made for fan service, or at least her design is, however, she is more than just a waifu bait, and if you're denying that, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the only thing about her that's fan service is her design. Her trailer is not. Her voice is not. Her attitude is not. Her story is not. To me, I view that story as a child or student fulfilling her master's last task, proving herself, overcoming a lifelong problem, and standing her ground across a legendary person she only ever heard of until today. More importantly, dude, if you played through almost 2 hours of amazing storytelling and the only two things that stayed in your head afterwards are huge boobas, that's a you problem. That's a you thing. Now, if I tell you that Changli is my favorite character because of her lore, you'll be like, no, you just like her booba. And I mean, sure, I do like her, but untrue. She is my favorite character because of her lore. It's exactly as I say it. Hopefully, Kuro gives us even better stories in the future. There's almost nothing to do in this patch, but no matter what happens, I think I'll keep coming back to this game if they stay consistent with his writing. Very excited, especially for morally gray characters and villains. I'm pumped to see how they pull that off. And while this marks the end of this video, let me know what you thought about this and about Changli's story, Wu's story so far, all of it. I kind of rushed this one, so I guess I rambled a lot. But I promise to make better lore story analysis videos in the future. I'm gonna do story and lore content like this for Wuthering Waves moving forward, and maybe even some other gacha games if you're nice. Leave a like and subscribe to not miss anything. If you're still watching, you're awesome, and because of that, you'll never lose your 50/50s forever and ever. And see you on the next one.